Good morning and welcome to Northbrae. Whether you are here in person or join us on Zoom, we are glad you are here. Now, some announcements. For the last couple of weeks and today, John Pemberthy has told us about Mother's Day lunch. If you would like to attend, please sign up at coffee hour or notify the office. They need to know how many tables to set up and how much food to buy. So, and next Sunday, April 30th, we will continue our ongoing series, Responding to the Climate of Hate Rising in Our Country. Our speaker will be Anita Madrid. She will be speaking about the world of building peace, the work of building peace. The talk will be at 12 o'clock in the parlor after church. Read about her career in the bulletin. Meditation will be tomorrow at 5, led by Judy, Carol Ann, and Jay. The community song group, led by Carol Ann Fusco, will meet in the parlor at 3:30 on Tuesday. Come and have fun singing songs of all sorts. No experience necessary. The craft group meets this week on Wednesday from 2 to 4 in the parlor. Bring a project or just come and visit. Please check your bulletin for announcements of other upcoming events. Thank you. And the women's chorus next Sunday afternoon at 4.
Good morning. I will mention more about the celebration of Mother's Day brunch. Mother's Day is only 3 weeks away. Last week I described the full course dinner or brunch and that we will be serving at a reasonable price so we can have everyone attend. The ladies will help in decorating and the men will do the serving so that the ladies can have their day off. Debbie will provide background music and make this a beautiful event. I have been organizing this event for many years. And at one time it was called Mother's Day Brunch. So why the change to the celebration of Mother's Day Brunch? The change came back many years ago when after the service I was in the parlor and one lady asked me, "Do you have to be a mother to attend?" And you see the expression on my face right now. I was dumbfounded. That was not our intention. And so we had to come up with a different name where everybody could attend, even men. Yes, men. We want men to attend too. As Kathy mentioned, we are taking reservations for the celebration of Mother's Day brunch. And men, if you can help prepare food on Saturday or serve on Sunday or do both, we could use your help. And again, please make reservations. Thank you.
Thank you, John and Kathy. Good morning. And happy Earth Day to you. We will be celebrating Earth Day this morning and have this wonderful service planned for you. The Tuesday group has gathered. We are normally on Zoom, and we've gathered in person. I actually have seen Sherry Poff for the first time in the flesh as we prepared for this and practiced for it. But we got to know each other on Zoom, and we're dealing with books that have to do with the earth. Kathy will fill us in as the service goes on. But there's this wonderful way this morning that there are going to be different voices speaking from their experience of the earth, concern for the earth, appreciation for the earth, and that those stories will be woven into the service. So it's a service unlike any you've ever experienced before. And because of that, just a heads up, the bulletin is a little different. Normally on the last page of the bulletin are readings, and that's not the case this morning. The service actually continues onto the the page that normally is taken up by the reading. So don't be thrown, just turn the page and the service will continue. So open your hearts to the wonder of the earth. Open your hearts to the reality that religious traditions across the globe and over time have celebrated the earth and the natural world as a part of the wonder of spiritual experience. And that will be the case this morning. So allow your own experiences of the earth to come to the forefront of your mind. Allow yourself to remember times when you've experienced the beauty and power, the majesty, the wonder of what it is to be alive, to have a human body connected to all of these other bodies, all of these other energies that are the natural world. And with that, we begin the service by singing For the Beauty of the Earth in the Silver Hymnal, number 21. If you are able, please rise. I need to sit. You may be seated.
Welcome to Earth Day at Northbrae. As Christy has already said, things are going to be a little different today. The Tuesday group has been studying eco-theology, that is, ecology and theology. It was suggested that we come up with a sacred story, but we couldn't come up with just one. So today you will hear many. We have recently finished reading Claiming Earth as Common Ground by Andrea Cohen Kiner. The book puts together a number of things that you can do to help our planet. For instance, compost food waste, or avoid dry cleaning, or buy products with the least amount of packaging. The list goes on and on. We are now reading Church of the Wild by Victoria Lours and Sacred Nature by Karen Armstrong. These books discuss religion and nature, or another way, theology and science. Victoria Lours discusses her life in fundamentalist churches, Christian churches, where she was discouraged from talking about nature. Nature is pagan. She eventually moved to more progressive churches and then out into nature, where she founded Church of the Wild. These churches, churches of the wild, are of many forms that meet and worship outside the walls of traditional churches. Karen Armstrong talks about when the divide between nature and religion happened. It was not until the 17th century that theology and science came to be regarded as different disciplines. God's in his heaven, all's right with the world, right? God's up there, but who's down here with us? And why do we have such an affinity for nature? Armstrong says that this didn't happen in other religions like Confucianism, Hinduism, Taoism. So today you will meet the Tuesday group. Well, most of you know all of us. When asked if anyone had a story about nature, everybody did. And they all wanted to share. So some found inspiration in poetry, some tackled stories from the news, and others had encounters in nature. When we finished the service in this space, you will be invited to process out the back doors and around into the sacred hoop garden, where the service will briefly continue and coffee hour will be served. So to begin, I want to share a poem from Church of the Wild by Catherine of Siena. All has been consecrated. The creatures in the forest know this. The earth does. The seas do. The clouds know, as does the heart full of love. Strange a priest would rob us of this knowledge and then empower himself with the ability to make holy what already was.
I would invite those who are able to please rise for the call to worship. This call to worship is taken from one of the books that the Tuesday group is reading. It's written by Opal Whiteley, who was a controversial person. And her writing carries within it both the insight of a very mature person and the spontaneity of a small child. And so as we read these words, allow the child's vision to come alive for you as she describes the hills, as she describes her experience with a tree. Let us say these words together. Morning is glad on the hills. The sky sings in blue tones. Little blue flowers are early blooming now. I do so like blue. It is glad everywhere. The earth sings in green. I did stop by some grand fir trees to pray. When one does look up at the grand trees, one does always have longings to pray. You may be seated.
Quand viendra la saison nouvelle, quand auront disparu les froids, tous les deux nous irons, ma belle, pour cueillir le muguet au bois. Sous nos pieds égarons les pelles que l'on voit au matin trembler. douce. Et dis-moi de ta voix si douce à toujours. Loin, ben loin, égarant nos courses, filles en fil la peine cachée. Et dans mon miroir des sources, son grand plein de pans penchés. Puis chez nous tout en rousse en panier à la son au doigt. Revenant rapportant des fraises, revenant rapportant des fraises des bois.
Praying now the words to the Lord's Prayer, written by Barbara Hill, acknowledging our call to live in community on this earth. Please join me. O Creator of all matter, whose sacred name is unknowable, may we build a community on earth in accordance with your intentions for the universe. Grant us the ability to feed ourselves sustainably and overlook our faults, as we must learn to overlook the faults of others. Lead us away from all that is unwholesome and divert us from all that is destructive. And all creation, its power and its beauty are yours from infinity to infinity. Amen.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in our hearts all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in our hands, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Good morning. It won't be a surprise to hear that rivers are very important to me. They lead me to where my heart longs to be, to where I connect with mystery. The sound of rippling waters over the rapids, the silence of sun-dappled ponds, the peace of ducks floating in eddies, the pterodactyl elegance of great blue herons guiding me down a river. The loon's call upon Canadian waters saying, I know you, you are known. And yes, the thrill of once again embracing the danger while navigating rapids. Being with all of these is where I feel alive, where I find life in all her vibrancy. Rivers talk to me. I have long held the conviction that there is a river that flows beneath it all, binding us to that which is beyond our knowing, while resonating with a deeper understanding of something profound and eternal. This is my faith. Paddling on rivers takes me into a different space and time, connecting to all that has been, is, and will be. For me, this connection is prayer. Mary Oliver, one of our poets and prophets, in her poem At the River Clarion, describes such connection. She says, I don't know who God is exactly, but I'll tell you this. I was sitting in the River Clarion on a water-splashed stone, and all afternoon I listened to the voices of the river talking. Whenever the water touched the stone, it had something to say. And the water itself, and even the mosses trailing under the water. And slowly, very slowly, it became clear to me what they were saying. Said the river, I am part of holiness. And I too, said the stone. And I too, whispered the moss under the water. I'd been to the river before, a few times. Don't blame the river that nothing happened quickly. You don't hear such voices in an hour or a day. You don't hear them at all if selfhood has stuffed your ears. And it's difficult to hear anything anyway through all the traffic, the ambition. If God exists, imagine how the lily, who may also be part of God, would sing to you if it could sing, if you would pause to hear it. And how are you so certain anyway that it doesn't sing? If God exists, he isn't just churches and mathematics. God is the forest, the desert, the ice caps that are dying, every one of us potentially. Yes, it could be that I am a tiny piece of God, and each of you too, which is a delight beyond measure. I don't know how you get to suspect such an idea. I only know that the river kept singing. It wasn't a persuasion. It was all the river's own constant joy. The river still flows from wherever it comes from to whether it has been told to go. Sometimes the river murmurs, sometimes it raves. The river keeps coming, touching me, passing by on its long journey, its pale, infallible voice, singing.
All of my life, the outdoors has brought me peace. Whether sitting in an apple tree when I was young, or watching the ripples of Turtle Creek when work was stressful, or talking to the deer in Montana. It makes me realize that spirit is all around and in us. This makes me think of the Northbrae affirmation. We embrace the many paths that lead to the holy, as well as the wide diversity in the human family, while honoring the one unity that underlies us all. Each person has their one, which is many names. The one for me is the Holy Spirit. I feel it in nature and particularly in animals. When I was getting up at 5:30 in the morning and getting ready for work, I remember the warm mornings, the open windows, and hearing the mourning dove. I've always loved the cooing. The doves became more meaningful to me when my husband passed in 1996. I had just returned from planning my husband's memorial service here at Northbrae. My parents had flown in from Arkansas to be with me and were in the house. I pulled into the driveway and was just sitting in my car thinking when I heard a rustling beside the garage. We had a firewood bin connected to the garage, maybe 10 feet away. On top of that bin was a pair of dove. They were just looking at me. I looked at them and said, "Please don't leave me. I need you." I walked into the house. My mother was in the kitchen. I went into her and she said, "How did it go?" I started telling her about my discussions with Reverend Sugarbaker when we heard scratching on the greenhouse window above the sink. We looked up and a pair of dove was walking back and forth on the window. I said, "Mom, You're not going to believe me. I saw these birds by the garage and asked them not to leave me. That moment brought me so much peace. I felt the caring. That caring message continued. As I walked my dog, the dove cooed, and I heard them every morning. One day, a feather was on my doorstep. To this day, the dove bring me peace. I have a parrot Rossmore. In the spring, most mornings, they are sitting on my patio fence. I feel the spirit saying, I care, I am with you. However we find that peace and connection, I do believe that the Spirit is in everyone and everything, speaking to us if we listen.
We now have the opportunity to offer our gifts for the ministry of Northbrae as we sing What a Wonderful World, and insert in the bulletin.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright, blessed day, the dark, sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
When I moved to California in 1999, I had been living in Maine on a dirt road in the woods for 11 years. And just imagine what it was like to land in Oakland in the city. The saving grace for me was that I lived in the Adams Point land in Oakland, which was down the block was Lake Merritt. The horticultural garden became my refuge. Most of my papers and all of my graduate school reading happened there. And then I'd take a walk around the horticultural garden. If you have never been there, you should really go because it's beautiful. It's a sacred and magical place. And they have, one of the sections they have is all palm trees. Now, I'm from the East. Palm trees by themselves, even if nothing special happened to me, palm trees are like amazing. And in the very center, in the heart of that garden, there is a palm tree that has one really large center trunk, And then there are 5 other pretty large trunks coming off that. And to me, I've spent my life climbing into the center of trees that have more than one trunk, because to me, they're prayer trees, and that's where I go to pray. And I would go there a lot, and I would climb into and lean against one of the trunks and just pray. And then I moved to Berkeley, and I very rarely went back there. And one day, I happened to be in the area, and I decided to go. And I'm walking around the garden, and I want to go visit that tree. It's in my mind. I want to go to that tree and climb into the center of it and pray. So I walk there, and I get there, and I'm standing looking at this beautiful, magnificent tree, and I'm thinking, oh, yeah, let me go. And at that moment, a squirrel came around one of the trunks I was looking at. And I went like this, and the squirrel took its paw and went, and we stood like that. I don't know how long we stood like that, looking at each other. It was a communion. I don't know if you've ever had that kind of experience. I know many of you have probably had the experience of being in relationship with a dog or a cat or some other kind of domestic creature. I had, certainly. But this was the first time I felt such an amazing sense of communion with a wild animal. And this squirrel looked at me, and I looked at the squirrel. And I don't know which one of us broke contact first, but it was a sacred moment.
You're fortunate. I forgot my 5-page report this morning, but I'll try to, but it goes with territory, old age and forgetfulness. Anyway, I'll try to ad-lib what inspires me about large bodies of water. My home in Maine was on a hill, and it had one of the best views anywhere of Sebago Lake. It wasn't a large lake. It was 9 miles long and 7 miles across. You had to move your head 3 times to see it all. But it was always changing, and every time I looked at it, it was inspiring to me. Clouds rolled in, the color of the water changed, and anyway, it was something that I liked very much. In 1950, I was stationed at Travis Air Base, and I looked forward to seeing San Francisco Bay and the Golden Gate Bridge that I'd heard so much about. When I finally was able to make a trip down on a bus out of Fairfield, we came in to San Pablo, Richmond, Berkeley, and there was such a stench. I asked the bus driver, "What is that stench?" He said, well, all the communities and cities around the bay were dumping their raw sewage into the bay. It would go out with the tide and come back with the tide. It was a mess. So when I came back to Berkeley in 1954 to go to university, that had all changed. They had got a municipal sewage plant installed, and the bay looked pretty compared to what it had looked when I saw it first. And then I learned later it wasn't the first time that the bay had been polluted. In the latter part of the gold rush era, miners searching for gold had used water cannons to blast down hills, and the silt and the chemicals they were using to reveal the elusive gold had gone into the bay, and even today that toxic material is in the fish, and people say that really the fish aren't fit to eat. So what happened? Where am I? And then the bay is a wonderful port. A lot of ships coming in, and industries are created all around the bay. There was not much access to the bay by people, and a lot of these industries just tossed their byproducts into the bay, out of sight, out of mind. That all seemed to be a problem. Anyway, when I graduated from the university degree in public health, I joined the Berkeley Health Department, and one of our responsibilities was to monitor the landfill on the bay. The landfills were permanent. So one of the jobs we had to, I say it's to monitor these landfills. But you go to the landfill and you look north and you see landfill in Albany, south. You see a landfill in Emeryville, and landfills were predicted to be something that was going to happen on indefinitely, and that would be permanent. It was great for the cities. They could find a cheap way to get rid of their refuge, old tires, old appliances, demolition products and stuff like that, and cover it over and then build on it, increase the tax basis, and did not want to stop, and they provided things to the community like berths for boats for the people who have boats, and all these places for people to walk, because there's no inadequate access for any people to walk around the bay. So it was a win-win situation for both the communities and for the people. And there was no way of stopping it. But we have to give thanks to some ladies who are living on the hill, Sylvia McLaughlin, Arthur Gulick, and Kay Kerr, who was the wife of Chancellor Kerr of the University of California at that time. And they solicited the help of Professor Mel Scott. He had been a professor of mine in city and regional planning, to write a proposal and submit it to the state legislature for consideration to stop the filling of the bay, because it had been predicted that by the turn of the century, by now, the bay would be pretty near full, and there would just be a narrow area through the bay of water. Anyway, that's legislation considered the proposal and ultimately passed legislation which is now known as Save the Bay. It created the organization which is still very active in Save the Bay, and one of the most important organizations I have donated to and continue to support because of their work in keeping the bay open and pristine and available to everybody. And then in the South Bay, there are a lot of salt ponds that were more or less given up by Leslie Salt Company in the 1970s. And it was about well over 16,000 acres. And the property brought up by developers with the hope of developing those salt ponds. And but the Holy Poly and the legislators thwarted the proposals, and since then about over 15,000 of those acres have been purchased by the state of California and the federal government. And they're now being turned back into use by wetlands and things like that. I'm not through yet. No, I just have 2 more sentences.
You got it.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I look out on that bay every day, and I'm inspired by it, and I'm happy that it's continued, and that I do worry about the ocean. When I see these large tankers coming in at the size of half the size of the length of the Golden Gate Bridge, I wonder when the next oil spill will happen to the bay. But I'm also heartened by the fact that young people are interested in keeping the bay pristine. They're volunteering and spending their time in restoring wetlands and planting native vegetation and encouraging wildlife back into the bay that hasn't been here for a long time. Thank you very much.
I realize we are going longer, and I hope you will stay with us. I suggest that what we do, if this is okay with Deb, is that we stand and sing 2 verses of Blue Boat Home. We'll save the last one for the end. So we can just move our bodies and allow ourselves to be energized for the final 3 voices that will speak. So the insert has the words, the first 2 verses of Blue Boat Home, and I invite you to rise.
Though below me I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun, my sail, and moon, my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home.
Please be seated.
Good morning. Seems I better talk pretty fast. Since we're on the theme of water, imagine an ancient spring sunrise on a vast lake. The lake is surrounded by dense green tule marsh. The air is filled with a cacophony of sounds from the many species of wildlife. Integrated into this abundance are bands of the Yokuts tribes who live along the lake shore, moving back and forth from higher ground as lake levels rise and fall with the seasons and years. For millennia, Lake Tulare had been fed by runoff from the high southern Sierra Nevada. The lake usually covered about 650 to 700 square miles, with water in some parts of the lake up to 25 to 35 feet deep. The lake would have been bigger after a series of wet years and smaller during a period of extreme drought, although even during drought years there likely would have been some runoff into the lake. Known as, quote, the largest lake west of the Mississippi River, it was a permanent feature of the ancient historic landscape. This vast lake was located in a low spot in today's Central Valley that was underlain by layers of impermeable clay, forming a kind of bowl. This meant that water accumulated there and was unable to leave except by evaporation or overflow. For eons, this vast aquatic ecosystem seemed a paradise, but it disappeared in the geologic blink of an eye following the arrival of European Americans into California. With encouragement from the first governor of California, the invaders nearly wiped out the indigenous Yokuts from around 19,000 down to 600 people. Within decades, new arrivals also arranged to drain the lake, the largest lake west of the Mississippi, drain the lake, with the goal of creating farmland for themselves in the process. Through the first half of the 20th century, a handful of mega farmers, spearheaded by J.G. Boswell, maintained a strenuous effort to avoid having Lake Tulare fully refill. Those farmers had sufficient clout with the federal government so that they could get the Army Corps of Engineers to spend millions of dollars building Pine Flat Dam on the Kings River as a flood control structure. The dam was completed in 1954 at virtually no cost to the farmers. Similar flood control dams were soon built by the Corps on adjoining rivers. It did not seem to matter that the principal area being protected from flooding was a vast, drained lake. According to the values of those times, growing huge acreages of cotton, alfalfa, tomatoes, and other row crops was much more important than having a navigable lake with abundant fish and wildlife that could be harvested and sold in the San Francisco markets. With the drying by diverting lake water elsewhere via clever engineering, all hope was lost that the Yokuts might be able to reclaim their own ancestral home areas. Not that anyone cared what happened to them at that time. Great dams run by the federal government and underwritten over the years by large growers manage the water released into it from the Kings, Tule, Kaweah, and Cairn rivers. Downstream, farmers and cities have erected hundreds of miles of levees and canals. However, despite all the efforts to keep Lake Tulari's bed dry, snow melt from the mountains overwhelmed the drainage system in 1969, 1983, and 1997. Each time, local fishes from reservoirs and ditches returned with the influx of water. This year, even longtime residents have been staggered by the brute swiftness with which Lake Tulare has resurfaced. In less than 3 weeks, a parched expanse of 30 square miles has been transformed into a vast and rising sea by furious storms, up to 17, and I've even read 21 atmospheric rivers. We all remember atmospheric rivers. Already, several communities have been evacuated and hundreds of homes and farm buildings destroyed or damaged. Sandbags are being helicoptered in. Dairy cattle have been hustled to higher ground by the tens of thousands. A local poultry facility surrounded by water was weighing whether to move or to slaughter 1 million chickens. And my cat would not like that. She likes her chicken cat food. And farmers are sparring over whose land should get flooded first, knowing that inundation will be a question of when, not if. At tense emergency meetings last month, farmers claimed that rogue actors were secretly cutting holes in levees. These are clay levees, violating long-standing traditions about the order in which farms were supposed to be flooded in wet years. One suspiciously damaged levee even flooded a black farming community. A public works official in Corcoran reported, and a lot of this takes place in that county, reported that the city had posted an armed guard at their levee to protect it. Elsewhere, county authorities thanked farmers for refraining from engaging in fistfights. Kings County has twice ordered the Boswell Company to release some floodwater onto its own land. Everyone knows that in the high southern Sierra Nevada, a record snowpack, triple the historical average, will strain the water supply managers who are already running that plumbing system like never before as the days lengthen and the spring skies heat. And as a matter of fact, I just read yesterday that the meteorology people have declared this weekend as the beginning of the big melt. So for some reason, Earth Day is when, the flood is going to happen, the greater flood. And you have to check out the pictures, particularly in the New York Times articles it's a reference of the bulletin. You can't believe this was formerly dusty farmland. The load of water, soon to course downhill, starting this weekend, dwarfs what is there already. It is so immense that officials project that in addition to expanding Lake Tulare, it will fill the area's 4 largest reservoirs 2 or 3 times over. If the snow melts too fast, it could overwhelm flood protections, inundating already saturated farm towns and perhaps even flooding the entire Central Valley. In Tulare Lake's revival this year, scientists, historians, and growers see an epic rematch gathering between nature and humans. For now, nature seems determined to win in an era of climate change, with extended dry periods followed by storms that deliver more water than anyone knows what to do with. Perhaps the time has come to let Tulare Lake and its surrounding marshlands return to their more natural state. Sorry this got political, but it's unavoidable. The environment is intermixed with human nature.
I belong to Elizabeth's writing group. Most times when we meet, she brings a poem, and if it sparks something in us, that's what we write to. One time, she brought You Are the Future by Rainer Maria Rilke, and as I read it through, most lines began with the word you, and it began to dawn on me, as each one began with a capital letter, that the you was not in fact the reader, but the creator. You are the future, and if I read the poem right, you are also the past, the beginning, before all beginnings, which we catch a glimpse of when we stand on the lip of the Grand Canyon and look down through millennia, when we see a volcano spit fire in the air, when we hold in our hand a fossilized creature from another age, or a rock that arrived here as a meteorite. But here, right here, is where we catch our glimpse of you. We learned that caring came to the earth through birds, the nests they ingeniously build for the future, the care they take to feed their young ones, hour after hour of labor, personifying love to us. And now we learn that the caring that underpins life on earth goes further back than that, goes back to the trees, the old-growth forest trees, with their secret underground mycelium pathways, sending both messages and sustenance through their hidden web. And we find that they feed not only their own offspring, but they feed other species. And when times are hard, those other species send food back. And we find that trees have memories. If you were a tree, where would your memory be stored? For trees, it is the roots, the very first thing that grows from the seed. And we wonder now whether, because trees like redwoods live for hundreds of years and have experienced many different types of climate, that maybe they can select amongst their DNA what goes into the new cones to face the future, which from the last few years we fear might be drought, though this year may have turned it all upside down. And then the Native Americans have taught us that all things are connected through the web of life. Pull on one strand, so much to discover of the deep, unsuspected connections that sustain life. And so many now are threatened to unravel. Mother, Father, however you appear, give us the wisdom, give us the will to honor your creation, to knit up the damage we have wrought, at first unwittingly, but now no longer so, to heal the warming seas, to bring back the ice at the poles and in the mountains, where the meltwater from winter's glaciers becomes the sustainers of summer's food crops. Teach us to heal the earth and also to heal our communities. Guide us step by step to a better way. And finally, a short poem. Last night, an owl. It's magic, the owl's hoot, a call from a distant world, a world of trees and air and darkness, of feathers so arranged to make flight soundless. Everything's silent, but then this strange and haunting cry out into the woods. Behold, I am here, I am here. And often no other sound, but sometimes distantly an answer. I too am here. And the stars look down silently, slipping in and out amongst the clouds. Sometimes a moon, September the harvest moon, huge and golden on the eastern horizon. Some other time, the merest crescent, caught high in a tree, silently it proclaims, I too am here. And my caught breath returns, I'm here too, it whispers, soundlessly rejoicing.
In the interest of time, I think I better skip half of mine, and I will just read the last part. This was written in the Write for Your Life group, and it was based on the poem Hope. What an appropriate poem. The sweet heron, he appears in our marsh several times a week. And once in a great while, we can see him fly by, and we stop and stare and exclaim on his beauty. And we look for him every morning, every day out at this Point Isabel marsh. Then we'll call out and point and see him standing like a statue, staring at the brown marsh water, contemplating dinner. Yesterday, he stood absolutely still, then suddenly, with a snap, grabbed some small worm or slug or morsel from the murky water. He strides elegantly, slow and deliberate, aloof, not noticing three silly women pointing at him, calling him Harry. Harry the heron. No, his eye is on the prize, which seems hard won. His long gray-brown beak pierces the water as he stands erect and strong with gray-brown frilly feathers on his chest, waving in the wind. Things like this are such a treat, and we savor him, our feathered statue, as he ignores people, nearby egrets, Canada geese, and mud hens. Delighting in the small things can be a lifelong occupation. Now we're checking on the huge white Mattia poppies, the orange and burnt orange California poppies, and huge wild pink and white radish plants, that's edible, along our walk, and we delight in the families of Canada geese, walking their fuzzy young between them, apparent on either side of these yet unfeathered, wobbling gray charges. I hope as we transition into our jazzercise gym, this was written in 2021, that we won't lose these marsh experiences we've enjoyed over the 16 months of COVID, nature's full year-round wild show as it changed throughout the year. I'll miss our talks as we walked along the road, discussing trips we would take, the takeout dinners, missing our grandchildren, hopes for our futures. But we didn't suffer much throughout COVID. We had Harry the heron and all of nature's children to console us. Don't worry. We'll be back. And lastly, today we're going to be going out to the Sacred Hoop Garden, and I will be smudging whoever wants to be smudged with the Salvia officinatus, which is the name for sage, and it comes from the Latin word salvere, or to heal. It's often associated with health and wisdom. Sage is held sacred by many Native Americans because of its purifying energy. It was and is used for sacred purposes and cleansing rituals. Sage must be gathered with good intentions that honor plant and environment. The root is left in the ground. If you are considerate and conscious of Native cultures and intend to use sage, you must do so by being considerate of others and honor the land. Today, we're not going to mimic the Native Americans. We are going to use sage as a blessing to honor and consider other spiritual cultures and rituals. I'll stand by the garden gate and use the sage, and I'll waft it with my hand, which is smudging. We're not touching. And our sage comes from the southwest, and we'll light it, and as it smokes, I'll wave the smoke towards you if you would like, to honor the natives' culture and the environment. And I'll see you there. And this is what sage is really a collection of grasses. As we drive along, we often would just cut it off the bushes. It's a funny gray-looking bush, and that is the sage. It has a very strong smell. So if you're allergic to incenses, maybe you don't want to partake. We'll see you there.
Thank you. And on that note, the Tuesday group has finished their presentation, and I invite us all to applaud and thank them for their wisdom and insight and beauty. And now please rise for the third verse of Blue Boat Home. Again, your insert.
I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
Please join me in the words to the benediction. The eyes of the future are looking back at us, and they are praying for us to see beyond our own time. They are kneeling with hands clasped that we might act with restraint, that we might leave room for the life that is destined to come. To protect what is wild is to protect what is gentle. The invitation now is to move out through the chapel, around through the parking lot, and into coffee hour in the Sacred Hoop Garden. Go in peace. Amen.